Welcome back to Sprague Homestead. So today we're going to talk a little bit about something you might have seen in the headlines, and that's RHD, RHDV2, or Rabbit Hemorrhagic Fever, Rabbit Hemorrhagic Disease. So for those of you who haven't heard of this, this is a big-time disease that has come out of Europe that is affecting not only our domestic populations, but also our wild rabbit populations. The original version, the RHD1 or RHD, had about a 90% kill rate based on infections. The RHDV2, which has now made it into our wild rabbit populations, has, from the last I've seen, about a 70% kill rate. It's a nasty little bit of business. It causes internal hemorrhaging. And it's very similar to what you'd see as far as Ebola in people. So when you see them actually getting sick, sometimes you don't see anything at all. You just have sudden death in your rabbitry. You might see sudden death with blood coming out of the nose, the eyes, the ears, or the vent area. So it's a nasty little thing. And it moves pretty quickly. So let's kind of talk a little bit about where it came from. So from everything I've been able to find, and I will admit that I am by no means an expert on it. I've been doing as much reading on it as I can. But from everything I've been able to find so far, they're saying that it actually was first discovered in an Angora herd in China in the 1980s. Now this is the RHD, the original version of this. Because it was in the, a domesticated herd, we have to assume it was in a wild rabbit population previous to this, but there was no actual confirmation of that. They didn't seem to find it anywhere. It just kind of flared up in this Angora herd. Well, it didn't take too long before it had spread, made its way into Europe and into Australia. So the reason this has kind of been a big deal, of course, Angoras are a domestic rabbit. All of our domestic rabbits come out of Europe. They're all descended from European wild rabbits. So it's been quite a big deal over in Europe, affecting not only the wild population, but the domestic population. Now, most of the rabbits, from my understanding, in Australia, same thing. They all pretty much came out of Europe. So what you have is, I guess in Australia there is a large feral population. This is domestic rabbits that have been turned loose and colonized. And there is some articles that I've read that have said it was actually released intentionally in Australia to try and curb the wild rabbit population, and has been a major, pain in the backside of anybody who's actually breeding domestic rabbits. Because it's in the feral population down there, and they're all European rabbits. So it's been around for a while. It had stayed overseas. We had had a few little cases pop up here and there in the United States. We had one in Pennsylvania a couple years ago, another in Ohio. It's been isolated incidents. Most of the time it's been in pet breeders or meat breeders, and particularly people who are breeding in colonies. And just because the rabbits are on the ground and it's easy to track stuff in. So, it'd been here just periodically. It wasn't a big deal. Everybody, every time we've had a case, kind of waits with bated breath to see what it's going to do. And it's pretty much always fizzled out. It's not gone anywhere. Pretty much in all of these cases, they've tracked it and not been sure even where it came from. So it's just kind of been flare-ups. And people have moved on and just kind of said, well, okay, it's not really here. Last spring, it actually got going in Canada. And I'm not familiar with Canada a whole lot, so forgive me. Just over the border from Washington was where the biggest part of it was. And what had happened there is they have a good domestic feral population, or a feral population of rabbits. And it got into that and spread like crazy. They were pulling out tons of dead rabbits. Naturally, it got into some domestic herds. So some breeders lost some rabbits up there. So Canada has been dealing with this for quite a while now, just a year and a half, something like that. And as we all expected at the time, it did cross over into Washington State. And it did get into some herds up there. And that was kind of it. I mean, we all watched it last spring, and it kind of just hung out. The Washington breeders were able to get the vaccine, which I'll talk about in a minute, and a bunch of them vaccinated, and it kind of fizzled out, and hey, that was it, because we all said, hey, it's not in the wild rabbit population, so if we can just separate, keep the infected herds quarantined, it'll all be okay. Cut to this spring, and I believe it was Arizona that had the first big flare-up of this, and it is in the wild rabbit population now. This is the RHD2, and it's everywhere in the Southwest. We have it in New Mexico. We have it in Arizona. It's in western Texas. I don't remember seeing it in Oklahoma yet. We've got it in Colorado. They've got it in the southern part of Utah. It's been found in Las Vegas and Southern California. So, and beyond that, south of the border, Mexico is having a huge problem with this. Far more even, I think, than we are. It's expanding here. But Mexico, from what I've seen when they've updated the maps, it looks like wildfire. It just really took off. So symptoms of this thing, like I said, it's a hemorrhagic fever, so it causes the hemorrhaging of internal organs and them to bleed out. 90% kill rate on the original RHD strain, 70% on the RHD2 strain. Incubation period on this, from what I have seen in the original, was 1 to 9 days. So the reason this is a big deal is you can get it into your herd, and by the time you realize it, it could be everywhere. The secondary strain, I have now seen articles that are saying it could be incubating as much as like 21 days. And that's a really big deal because you could really spread that thing around before you even know that you've had it. So it's got a pretty lengthy incubation period on it. How it spreads is rabbit-to-rabbit contact, fecal matter, urine, but it's also a very sticky virus, so it can get on stuff. I've seen reports where it can last through really high temperatures. It can stay viable through freezing, because a lot of people were saying, oh, when we get to winter, this will die back. It will stay alive even during freeze. So you can transport it on car tires and car tread. You can get it on your shoes. You can pick something up that's infected and not know it, get it on your hands. So it's a very sticky virus. It's kind of a big deal, particularly if you're buying used equipment. You really need to do a really good job at sanitizing it because you don't know what it's infected by. Because it's such a sticky virus, from what I have seen, birds of prey are a really big concern with this. They can eat an infected rabbit, carry it off, touch a branch, whatever, and it just moves through the environment until it finds a host. It can actually get onto flies. So flies are a big concern as an intermediary vector to carry this thing. So you're really going to have to try and keep insects down around your rabbitry. Rodents are another thing that can carry it. It doesn't get infected. It just affects lagomorphs, but it's still a big concern. That you've got insects that could be carrying this around, mosquitoes, flies, just any old thing. The family dog can pick it up, bring it through. So it's a pretty nasty little virus. You'll see me look down. I'm trying to look at my notes to make sure that I don't miss telling you something. So knowing that, a lot of people are asking me, what can we do? And I wish I had really good answers for you, but there's only so much we can do right now. The big thing is, if you are in an area where you have the chance of exposure, particularly in the Southwest, you need to be very, very, very diligent on your biosecurity. You probably need to have shoes that you're only wearing into your barn area, that you're disinfecting, that aren't coming in or out of your barn. I know a lot of people that are wearing scrub tops or jackets or whatever for when they're going in and dealing with their rabbits that they're not wearing anywhere else. Window screening, try and keep things bug tight, which I know is really challenging this time of year because a lot of us are worried about fans and ventilation and making sure we're not killing our rabbits to the heat. but you've got to keep the insects out. Things like Country Vet spray, the little metered spray, I did a review on it a couple years ago, but we use them. It puts out a burst of bug spray every like 15 minutes. I will say that the fly spray is not as effective at killing insects as the fly mosquito. So you might want to consider getting one of those. They're not that expensive. I want to say they're 20 or 30 bucks maybe, because I know the price has gone up. You can get them on Amazon. They put out a spray every 15 minutes. A can will last you like 30 days. They take, I think they're AA batteries. They're overall a really good investment, especially right now when you're trying to keep insects down. So I know it's a lot easier for us that have our rabbits in a barn. If you're doing the whole hutch thing, I've seen some really creative stuff online where people are, kind of building in the other underside of their hutches with like window screening to try and keep bugs out. That they're building like these little, a lot of people have like 2 hutches that'll face each other, and they're actually building up, a screen over the top of it and down along the back to try and keep insects out. So these are things that you probably need to be looking at. You can use the Country Vet spray outside. I don't know how effective it's going to be. There's a lot of different stuff. I know some people are going out in the yard every day or every other day and spraying the cutter sprays and some of the other ones that kill insects and try and keep stuff down. Just keep in mind, don't spray the rabbits with it, because a lot of that pesticide stuff is just not good for, animals. And you want to make sure you're keeping it off the feed. But anything to cut insects down, like I said, you want to use really specific clothing or shoes to go into the barn. For sanitation purposes, to wipe things down, you can use a bleach solution. I would suggest that you look that up online. I don't want to make a recommendation here because I've seen wildly different numbers. So look it up, see what you find that makes you feel comfortable. I'm not even going to quote it because I've seen a couple of different things now. As far as commercially available disinfectants, Vicron is the one that is being mostly recommended. And you can get that on Amazon if it's available. I know they were sold out there for a while. I have some that I keep on hand, but it might be kind of hard to come by. There are probably a lot of other things that they use in the grooming industry. I haven't looked into it. Those are the only 2 that I've seen really widely recommended. So you might want to do your own research, see what will kill a calcivirus, because that's what this is. If you are in an area, a state that's been affected, like Washington or any of those southwestern states that I mentioned, you probably have the option to go get vaccinated. So we do not actually have a vaccine in the United States for it. It is still listed as a foreign disease. So the FDA and the USDA has said we're not going to do any kind of vaccine or anything here because it's not our problem. From what I saw this morning, though, apparently the FDA is working with a couple of labs that we've now had enough infection that they're looking at giving a couple of labs the approval to go forth with it. I don't know anything more about it than that. Either way, I think that's a long time coming. But right now, if you are in a state that's got an active case of infection, the USDA will allow emergency importation of the virus, or the vaccine, not the virus. We've already got that. What you'll have to do is you'll have to get in touch with a veterinarian and find a vet that's willing to bring it in. There's a whole bunch of vets in some of these areas that are willing to do it. There's also a lot of vets that have no idea because they don't do it with rabbits. You can probably look it up online. If you're on Facebook, I really recommend getting into some of these RHD groups because there's a lot of good information being shared there. I will say the vaccination prices are varying wildly right now. I have seen prices anywhere from $25 to $175 a rabbit. So you're going to have to see who in your area has it. And if it's at a price you can actually afford, vets are requiring that they have an exam. Some veterinarians are requiring that they microchip the rabbits. There are other vets that are saying as long as they are tattooed, that is permanent identification enough, and that they'll do it. But there again, it varies not only by state, but by veterinarian's office. And you'll want to check in and see what is available in your area and what your vet will actually be able to do. Keep in mind that when it comes to the vaccine, like all vaccines, it is not guaranteed to be 100% effective. So keep that in mind when you're doing it. Personally, for me, of course, we can't get it in Oregon right now. We haven't had a case, but I will not be vaccinating. I have about 75 breeding animals, and it's not cost effective for me to do it. The vaccine, part of what makes it so expensive is not only do you have to vaccinate on the front end, you have to have a booster in 6 weeks, followed by an annual every year. So it's going to be kind of expensive. I know people that are choosing to vaccinate their most important members of their herd, you know, a rabbit that maybe culminates 20 years of work in a breed, and that's fine. If that's something you want to do, you should probably look into that. Now, the other thing I've had people ask me is, how does this impact meat breeding animals? And I do not have an answer for you. It's my understanding that the vaccination does not transmit to the offspring, so I don't see where it would actually harm any animals that you're producing for meat later on, but I don't know that for sure. You're going to want to really do some research there. Everything that I have found so far is kind of vague. So if anybody has a better answer to that, and you know, something that they can cite, please leave it down in the comments or shoot it to me and I'll put an update in another video. Because there's just a lot of stuff happening with this right now that I don't see a lot of really good, consistent information. It's just kind of the way it is. I don't know how many people are actually doing the research on it. So what do you do if you think you have it, or if you're finding a lot of dead rabbits in your area? First, you'll want to make sure that you are contacting your state veterinarian. There is a protocol, and this is why I also say look it up online. A lot of states now have their own protocol listed. It's my understanding that you bag it and then double bag it to make sure that the virus is not getting out of the bag, that you get it to your state veterinarian. There's only one lab in the United States right now that can test for it. It cannot be tested on live rabbits. It can only be tested dead, and they have to extract the liver and send the liver out for testing. So it's absolutely important, whether you have rabbits or not, that you are keeping an eye on your wild rabbit populations or your feral rabbit populations. If you are having a lot of rabbits suddenly die in your domestic herds, definitely get with your vet or your state vet and have it tested, because you know, you got to really keep ahead of this thing. You don't want to get a whole bunch of infected rabbits. There are some states that are requiring mandatory, I can't remember exactly what their word for it is, but basically if you get a case, they want you to put the whole herd down and burn all the rabbits. A lot of the states now are not doing that, so that's another thing to kind of keep an eye on. Every state's a little bit different on how they're handling it, but quite a few of them now are saying it's a 60-day quarantine, as far as they will quarantine you once you've had clear for 60 days, so no active cases in 60 days, then your quarantine is lifted. So kind of a big deal. My honest opinion and the way that it is look, it's in our wild populations now. This disease is not going anywhere. We're going to have to learn how to live with it. And, you know, it just kind of is what it is. It's like anything else. Once it's spread this far, this fast, it's not something we're going to see go away anytime soon. So I would strongly urge everybody to start working on a biosecurity plan if you don't already have one. Us personally, it's still 500-600 miles from us in any direction, and you better believe I keep an eye on the maps to kind of see where it is. So we have everything in place to do it. Am I sanitizing my shoes every time I go in there? No, honestly, I'm not. But I am keeping a really strong eye on what my wild rabbits are doing around here, and keeping my flies down, and trying to keep my insect load as low as possible in the barn. So that is my little spiel on RHD. Like I said, I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything there is to know about it. But if you have questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments. I will do my best to get you answers. And that is it from Sprague Homestead for today. We will see you next time, and happy homesteading.